Welcome to The Shadow Side with Safrianna, the podcast where we illuminate what others too often keep hidden in the dark. I'm your host, Safrianna Lughna, and I believe that true growth and healing happen when we're brave enough to explore the shadows. As you listen, may you find greater understanding and awareness around your personal stories and collective trends. Take care of yourself, and let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of The Shadow Side with Safrianna, where we go and we do what we need to do, even when the technology is being chaotic, even when the vibes in the collective are chaotic, even when the whole world seems chaotic. We are here to just show up in the ultimate unconditional love and talk about what needs to be talked about. So, welcome back again to another episode. I am so glad to be joined by my partner in crime here, Ikenna. Ike, since you haven't been on the shadow side, if you don't know out there, Ike and I do have a podcast named after our brand, Living Luna, Uplifting the Others. And we do have 2 seasons that are out there that you can listen to. But this is your first time being on one of my solo programs. So welcome. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks. My name is Ikenna. I am a licensed graduate professional counselor, basically on the verge of becoming fully licensed, working with queer and neurodivergent peeps of all ages. And that's like my career. But also, I am a musician. I am a multi-passionate creative. I am just a lifelong learner of so many different things. So like I'm constantly learning about especially creative endeavors. So I'm learning about like video editing and just different art mediums and how to incorporate some of those pieces into my work, and also community building. And yeah, there's a lot of different stuff that make up me, but we'll stop at that point.
And just in case you don't know me, I'm Safrianna Lughna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I'm a licensed trauma therapist, and I help visionary leaders and healers get out of their own way so they can heck and slay. That's my favorite slogan I've come up with for what I do. And
Love it.
like Ikenna, I'm a multi-passionate creative. I'm an author, a poet, nonfiction, fiction. I paint. I do all kinds of creative things. And Ikenna and I founded our Living Luna brand together over 4 years ago now, but we've been at it for a while. We're still learning and growing. And with this program, the evolution of doing podcasting, it was like we had a lot of really good conversations, but a lot of times I felt like we were missing the really important things that needed to be talked about. And so that's why I'm excited for us to talk today about our topic, which is hierarchy and the truth about hierarchy. Oh, it's a pretty heavy topic. We're going to look at it from a couple different angles and just discuss what hierarchy at its core. Let's just start with what that is, right? Hierarchy at its core is the idea that something is above something else. So when we start to apply this to the human collective, it gets really problematic. We're going to break that down today. So yeah, anything you want to jump in with, Ike?
It's a doozy of a topic, because I remember just thinking about like where hierarchy exists, and it's so pervasive. You can't really look at any area of any aspect of the world that has human like in it, right? Because there's the nature piece, because I feel like hierarchy is just a human created concept, right? Like we can look at different ways that animals exist in packs and whatnot and see who's hierarchical in different ways, but they're hierarchical in ways that we aren't hierarchical. Like the alpha male in a wolf pack usually stays at the back to make sure that they protect the older, weaker parts of the pack. That's really incredible. That's not what we usually witness in what is considered the leader. Could you imagine if the leader of our country only focused on sitting back and really taking care of those that are old and weak and falling behind of the pack? That would be incredible.
It sure would. There's a lot. I know we're going to get into it today. There's a lot from nature that we can borrow the wisdom from. And I know a lot of people would probably jump in with, but the food chain exists and there's a clear hierarchy in the food chain. And that is true, but you only see humans trapping other animals in pens and force feeding them to slaughter. So there's some things there. But when were you first personally aware of there being some form of social hierarchy, or I want to call it artificial hierarchy?
Oh man. That's tough because it's like when you are a child, that's when you're first shown that there's hierarchy in your experience. Because usually adults are like, I don't understand why you're upset about this. So you're wrong.
Huh.
And it's okay. So obviously, there's more value for you being older. And therefore, your experience can dictate what my experience is. So that was like the very first is like when I would be very upset, and usually it would be a an adult figure being like, "You are being over dramatic," or
Mm-hmm.
"You are being too much," or "Why are you crying? There's no reason to cry about this."
Yep.
And yeah, so that was probably my first realization that it was like, I have no say. My lived experience is wrong. And apparently, I need to only care about what this other person is telling me to feel.
Yeah, that hierarchy, and again, it's a false hierarchy. It's an artificial hierarchy, and my poor little brain is like, oh my gosh, there's so much to say about this, because we definitely have this mentality that the elders know it all. But what we see in more diverse cultures, indigenous cultures, in like real lived wisdom, is that the elderly always have things to teach the young, and the young always have things to teach the older, and that neither is better. That's the core wisdom. But yeah, for me, I would say I first started to really notice hierarchy when I also started to be abused.
Mhm.
So in my early childhood, it was just me and nature. I was just outside all the time. I did not really interface with society or church. I didn't go to church until I was actively being abused. There was no religious hierarchy even until it was sprinkled in there, but it didn't really stick until I was older and I was in this really nasty situation being abused by an adult. And that adult used his power, his religion, his political status to explain to me why he was in the right. And that started to make me believe or question, like, are there belief systems or kinds of people that are quote unquote better? And it never landed with me. And I know part of that is because I'm a bio number 9, and it just doesn't stick. Like hierarchy doesn't stick. And it was always very confusing. But it was this reality that I was still stuck in the hierarchical system, even if I didn't believe in it. And even
Mhm.
if I wanted to be out of it, I was powerless as a child to break out of that. So that was my initial experience of hierarchy. So this goes right into the next thing I want to dive into, which is us versus them mentality. Because again, going back to my experience, which was being groomed by a person who I know is a Christian nationalist who thinks there's only one right way to be,
Mhm.
and that is to be completely right wing, completely Christian, born again, and to have dominance over anyone who is not white, and dominance over anyone who is not Christian and not male. And that was I literally was groomed to believe that, and didn't start to question that even until I was 18. And so there was all this woven us versus them narrative in growing up. Like I constantly heard racist awful shit. And I constantly heard things about other religions. Oh my gosh, being in middle school when 9/11 happened, the absolute awful things said and done towards the Muslim community, the Islamic community, simply for any related association with potentially being the same kind of person based off of what? And this plays out everywhere, but I just want to start with like how this gets planted in us very early. So you've mentioned like parents, right? Parents will say things. For me, it was an abuser that really groomed me. But I think a lot of it does come from church, school, peers to some extent, if their parents are saying things.
I mean, my best friends that live down the street from me, thankfully my parents showed me that we could question some of their more intense beliefs, like for example, like they didn't let their kids read Harry Potter because it had witchcraft sort of thing, but they let them have Star Wars things. So apparently the Force is different, which I mean it technically is, but there were some things that I was like I would have to respect the mom of those kids that I would go because I would want to play with them and hang out with them, and then the mom would have the final say of different things. And so I would say, "What the heck?" And she would be like, "That technically is close to you saying hell, so we don't allow people to say that." And I'm like, interesting.
Hmm.
So there's it was interesting from my point of view because there were some pieces of this is too rigid. Like there was like this rigidity piece. And I think it's because my mom grew up in Catholicism and she decided to go and become Protestant. And so there was this that was her own kind of like coming out journey, like her all small little coming out journey of this is too rigid. I need to have a space that I can be a little bit more like she saw the hierarchy of how no woman was allowed to be in any part of leadership in the Catholic Church at all, versus in Protestant churches, women are in leadership positions all over. So she got out of that to get into here, into the Protestant, but that was just like a little shift. Like it was a safe enough shift to get to, I still believe in Christianity, I still believe in this stuff. And I'm like, and so then when I was starting to question things of they don't allow queer people in some of the Protestant concepts of Christianity, what's going on here? And the United Methodist Church was where I was raised in, and there was this giant like schism of some of the United Methodist Church was like, we believe in this equality, and then there's other people that are like, absolutely not, we do not believe in that.
Right.
And I can already feel myself, this topic is so hard because I can feel myself getting down a tangent that isn't necessarily related to the initial. Bring me back to the original question, please, because I feel like I'm going off into a tangent that's not necessarily fully related to it.
What I'm hearing you speak to is the rigidity that many of us experience because we were, for the most part, raised to believe one thing, right? I feel like there are very few instances, it's becoming more and more common, but few instances when we were growing up or our peers were growing up, or even some of our maybe a little bit older peers did not experience that upbringing that said, you know what? I want you to decide for yourself. Here's all the options on the table. There are hundreds of world religions, and you don't even need one. You could just be spiritual and breathe and go outside. We weren't taught that there's all of these different kinds of people and all of these different world cultures. Like for the most part, we were taught, oh, this is just the way it is. And it's this, our family is the norm. And everything that's not our family is different. And in some cases, like I've spoken a lot publicly on my journey with racism and how I didn't really understand what racism was. Like I didn't experience it until I moved to Maryland. And then there were racists everywhere. And I was like, oh, what's this? Am I supposed to think and feel this way? It does get it planted in us when we're exposed to it. But a lot of us are sheltered by our families or sheltered in our school systems. There's not wide education. And I think that leads to this greater us versus them. And right now, we certainly live in a world where almost everyone I know has had some form of us versus them belief. I've had to uncouple from that so much to return to that unconditional loving source, because there have absolutely been times where I've been, that quote unquote other side, whatever that other side is in this instance, like they're wrong, they're bad. but that is still us versus them, and it's still putting us on a hierarchy of my ideas are better than theirs. End of
Mhm.
story. And so this creates lots of problems. So I want to go into my next point, which is like inherited power structure.
Mm.
So like you, for example, inherited a power structure by being adopted,
Mhm.
right? So like you got to inherit a different power structure than you would have had in your birth family, which is just
Mhm.
also an interesting, like literally the circumstances that you come into with your family determine so much of what you're going to inherit in terms of your power structures. But when we look at these bigger hierarchical power structures, we look at who keeps the money and who controls the power. How often is it within family systems? How often is it like this millionaire passed on their fortune, or this billionaire passed on their fortune, or this specific family is revered as being the most politically minded because they've had so many people in politics. So clearly, because they have the same last name, they must be the greatest at what they're doing. Like that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, that inherited power structure. Any thoughts on that?
There's so many there's so much about the generosity of people, like the parable of, we talked about this the other day, of Jesus looking like witnessing people tithe, essentially give to the church or give to, I don't exactly remember where they were giving to, but essentially they were donating, and a rich person or nobility came in and dumped all of these piles of coins and flourished of, look at how generous I am, I'm giving all of this to the people and I don't have to. And there was an older lady that came in with one little coin and dropped it into the the pin, and they were like, and Jesus was like, that person gave all of herself to this. Yes, like generosity in terms of, that's where the power comes in. It's like,
The difference between someone with $1 billion giving $1 million and somebody with $100,000 giving $1,000 is a massive difference.
yeah.
The power dynamics there huge, right?
Mhm.
And when the power structure is literally just being passed on and no one's questioning it, it's only serving one kind of people. Because in that parable, I can't help but think if that rich person instead handed their wealth out to the community instead of rolling it into the church or wherever it was being given, that woman in this parable wouldn't have just had the one coin. Because
Mm,
there is plenty of resource to go around, and that's where this whole inherited wealth, inherited power, inherited belief system continues to keep us very trapped in the us versus them mentality, and then in that ranking of people. Because the big issue is that we literally as a society believe that because someone has all of that money, they are morally superior and somehow deserved that over other people.
and
But
that they
that's
have, yeah. And if they've paid for it, if they've paid for the, let's say there's so many at universities, for example, buildings all over the place that have the same last name because philanthropists donated millions of dollars to build a certain thing, right?
Mhm,
Same thing for people who donate for grants, right? The grants have specific, we both worked at a hotline for domestic violence and sexual assault. Those are based off of grants.
mhm.
Now, there were certain things that you couldn't offer for people because
Yeah.
it wasn't under the grant. There were certain way, like there was still restrictions. Or when the buildings are built and they have the person's name on it, like it's almost similar to people being like, I'm paying taxes for schools to have public education, and therefore I want the public education system to only teach the things that I want my kids to learn. And it's like, why are we, it's interesting, there's like this entitlement to rigidify the information. It's so hard to determine if like people are afraid of others knowing different. So it's no, we have to keep you stuck in this particular way of viewing things so that I know it's informational assimilation, essentially.
Mhm.
Oh, like, how dare you look out past this or have a different way of living life? In order for me, from my point of view, fully understand you, you have to learn how I think.
Mhm.
And it's okay, but why aren't you doing that to someone else? Like, why are you not considering learning about someone else's point of view and how they look at things?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, you have to go based off of what I have explained.
Yes,
So,
and it's that rigidity I'm actually writing about a little bit in my A Woman's Work bonus essay because I was having a great conversation with Dr. Bird the other day, and that rigidity is the core of it. Ancient societal hierarchies ingrained into our world keep us divided and under others, and that's totally true. I could go on a vent right now. I'm not going to for the purpose of this podcast. People, if you want to hear this, tell me and I will do another episode on it. But there's so much Atlantean stuff that's playing out right now when it comes to the hierarchy. But ultimately, even here on Earth, there's been so much hierarchy passed down, and it really started with agriculture and farming and certain people taking over those roles and other people profiting off of that, and so much of that we're not going to get into because I am not the history buff here, but I think it's important to do research on and whatnot. And yes, money equals power. The Supreme Court pretty much has ruled that money equals policy, and there are many cases where it's totally legal for corporations to fund political endeavors because corporations are considered people, which just wrap your head around that, right? They're not. But people have passed their power off into the name of corporations so that they can get away with literal murder in some cases. So there's so many issues here, and I want to dive right towards nature because this is one of the things that human supremacy is an entire myth, right? Mama Gaia, as I call the planet, has been here way longer than humans have, way longer. And so many other beings and entities have existed way longer than humans. But because we have big brains and we've got thumbs and we've learned to walk and talk and do things, we think we're better than others. But the ecosystem actually shows us so much about how diversity and community and mutual aid rather than domination is what keeps health going and prosperity for all. And it really is like when we look around at extinction, the extinction for the most part isn't happening because of humans are animals, but the what we consider animals, it's not because the animals are killing each other off completely and utterly. It's because of things like deforestation and ocean damage and pollution and humans thinking that they're better than everything else and so can just go through and prolifically take over everything. And that is having some really, really devastating consequences on not just the planet, but us as well. And a lot of people don't want to look at that
nope.
at all.
Yeah, I mean it's the ignorance is bliss sort of thing. That's that concept in of itself is like what I was getting to. If we try to be like, this is the information that I know, and if I learn anything else, I will be overwhelmed or questioning my beliefs or
We could literally go down the bio numbers, right? Like one bio number one might experience shame in changing their mind, right? Oh my gosh, how didn't I know this before? A two might be disappointed in themselves for not understanding it. A three might be upset they missed detail. An eight might think they're not loyal enough to their family system if they break out of their ideas. There's all of these different lenses. A five might be rigid in their framework because the framework is what they build. And if something doesn't fit in the framework, like, what do I do with that? So there's
Mhm.
all of these different stories behind why we divert our attention or why we stay in that rigidity. But it's a choice. It is 100% a choice. And we can move in the direction of being better and not having this hierarchy. Human power and control, there's all of these excuses humans use for why they are better. And I think that we have bigger brains and we're the smartest species is like one of the collective's favorite stories. I don't know that that's really true, friends, but you go on believing what you want to believe, I suppose. But is it like what if we feel ourselves in a hierarchical situation, like we believe ourselves superior to someone or something else? Why? What is the story that we're telling? Is it our intelligence? Is it our age? Is it an ability that we have? Is it somewhere in our privileged status, right? I like to talk a lot about intersectional feminism, Black feminism, and the privilege line. Is it because we're above the privilege line somewhere that we think we're better than others? Like, these are the things we really have to question and get curious about, because when we actually get into the answers, they fall apart.
Mm. Yeah. And there's so much like we want to be good at the end of the day. Like whenever we use fear mongering or shame tactics to ruffle feathers on the other side, so to speak, it really hits the wounds of people being like, I'm trying my best here. Like I have the I with the information that I am working with, I am trying to be the best I can be with this, and it's overwhelming to know that there's other information that that goes against a belief system that I have been cultivating for decades. There's this interesting paradigm shift I'm seeing with relationships because there's this huge piece of we were raised in families, at least this is how I was raised, was like the concept of both sets of grandparents never divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Never. Like, and I know that divorce exists in different family systems, of course, in different ages, but what that taught me was success equals a marriage that lasts the whole time. Like, from the first person that you meet and have sex with, and you have been married to them until you die, that is the point of a relationship. There was just so much belief there. And I'm seeing a lot more in relationships now. Yeah, you see how it
Yeah,
relates to different things.
I
Yeah. Uh, but what happens with that mindset is we aren't able to, like, there becomes like these just standard beliefs. If I am in this relationship forever, I am good. If I am not in this relationship forever, I am bad. There's just this like hierarchy places good, bad characteristics on people. Um,
mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the biggest things of like better, worse, good, bad. That's what happens a lot in terms of our internal, like in terms of internal family systems. Like if you take a part of you, and there's like books, like there's this book called No Bad Parts for that reason, because every aspect within us can get activated to such a degree that could have us go into a behavior that causes harm,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's unintentional. And that doesn't make us a bad person, but all of us have that within us in terms of these pieces of us that don't, yeah. So the bad, good references that we make just absolutely overwhelm us in terms of proving our goodness.
And this is the thing right now. I'm going to get very political for a second.
Excellent.
Right now, people who appear Latino, Latina, Latinx, or Hispanic appear, right? They may not even be, but appear. Those people are being targeted
Mm-hmm.
in the US. Because why? And these are assumptive hierarchies. This person doesn't look like me. I am the better person. End of story. And that is this really weird freaking place to be in collectively right now.
Mhm.
Because you would think, and what kills me is that the same people who are quick to point fingers at people who look a certain way are the same people who tend to then try and share the I'm colorblind thing.
Mm.
And that's hierarchical too, when you try to wipe out everybody and homogenize everything and whitewash, right? That is still putting whiteness on the hierarchy. It's I literally could go off on this for
Well, there's
forever.
yeah, because that's the thing is like whiteness is not about skin color anymore. Whiteness is an ideology.
Mhm. I have big feelings about that, but like that's the rigidity, the
Mhm.
going back to that inherited power structure, right?
Mhm.
Because whiteness is now inheriting the power structure, which is
Mhm.
why we need more white and white presenting people to keep pushing back against the power structures, right? But this hierarchy of because someone is different, period, they are lesser than, has to go away. For as long as that exists, we cannot have world peace. For as long as that exists, we can't have collective unconditional love. And it really, my partner has a saying that he says all the time, that every accusation is a confession.
Mm.
And again, a lot of the things that people try to point fingers at when it comes to an us versus them side thing are often pointing fingers about the same thing they themselves do on their own side. It's usually confession, right? And that's why I've been very vocal that I'm very disappointed in all of our political parties and the whole
Yep.
damn system as it's been built, because it's been built to simply create an us versus them on either
Mhm.
side, so that we will continue to fight each other and not find our common ground. But
Yeah.
we all bleed red. We do.
No, I'm a
That was
reptile. I only bleed blue. No, I'm just kidding.
That was the story I heard from someone the other day, was that their racist father literally told them that black people bled a different color and that they weren't human when they were a
Oof.
kid, and they believed it until they were playing sports with someone, and another kid who was black skinned their knee like during the sports practice, and like they ran over to look. Because they were like, oh my gosh, it's my opportunity to see the green blood. They were a kid, right? But it was this like, we believe until we question things.
Mm.
So if you're a person, I don't know how many people watch our program that would believe this at this stage, but if you do believe someone is lesser than based on their skin color, their religion, their gender identity, their sexual orientation, you have probably been programmed to believe that. Because is that really true when you look at it? When you actually sit down with other real people and have conversations, are they that different from you? And we find over and over and over again that it's not.
It also causes us to be really hard on ourselves when we see aspects of ourselves reflected in some people. So whenever someone's really hard on themselves, being like, "Oh, I'm so stupid. I should have known that," or like, "I can't believe I did that thing, and only this type of person would do that." And it's oh, okay. So we're already seeing how you consider people who do that, and where you place you're like, I can't be considered a part of that because
Mhm.
then I would be less than. And it's like, oh my gosh, if we're constantly battling the idea of being like trying not to be less than, it just becomes we're not a when we're in constant fear that we're going to be considered less than, then there is no room for curiosity or
Mhm.
play or joy because we're just in fear and anxiety of trying to constantly show up in the hierarchical way that we think is good.
Right. And just it's so heavy. It's so
Yeah.
heavy to look at the collective and see that that's the struggle. And everything stems back to trauma.
Yeah.
And I think that a huge reason, I'm going to go back to the politics.
Mhm.
The huge reason that many people will ostracize another, try to diminish another, try to tear them down, make them illegal, whatever excuse they're using, is often rooted in a fear that if this other has rights, that means I'm going to lose mine. If
Mhm.
they have success, happiness, health, money, whatever, I won't have that because it's finite. But that's not the case.
There's also this fear, like there's fear of this unknown person.
Who's going
So
to take it?
they're going to take all, if I give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, right? And I think that's what causes there to be these like radical concepts of the fears, especially about like trans people, of this is their agenda, they're wanting your kids to be trans. No, if your child is not trans, I do not want them to be trans. I want them to be whoever they want to be. That's the thing. If they end up realizing that they're trans, I don't agree in people not allowing their kid to explore those, like people to explore those concepts and expressions. And I also totally believe that you need to spend time before you consider major surgery. And so I agree, but also I'm like, we all just want healthcare. Like
We all
all of
just
us
want
just want
healthcare.
healthcare.
Well,
Why
and
are you so focused on trans people when all of us just want healthcare?
this is a very important part about hierarchy too, because I know that there was this narrative that is 1 trillion% false that President Trump shared, that kids were showing up to school and getting trans surgeries and coming home. That has never once in the history of history happened.
Nope.
Never once. But because he has hierarchical power, because he has money, he's inherited this power, people will believe him
He's the political
blindly.
messiah. Yeah.
Blindly. And
Yeah.
that is how hierarchy continues. So I think this is a very important part because people there is a reason for hierarchy. I want to talk about what the purpose of hierarchy is and how it can be healthy, because we do need hierarchy sometimes. For example, having a president who sits as a president and has a normal level of hierarchy as a president is functional, because it's supposed to function in the branches of the government to make sure power is distributed and all of that. And there's checks and balances, a lot of which are going away right now. Please go educate yourself. But normally that would be great to have a hierarchy. This is the person you go to when you need to talk about this thing. And then that person would go to this person or this group to share that information, right? Like a hierarchy of flow. So thinking about workplaces, there can be a function to having your floor workers who are doing the whatever the base job to run the company is, whether that's selling products or making calls or doing data entry, whatever it might be. And then you have a few people who are supposed to oversee those groups and make sure everybody has what they need, can function in their role happily and be healthy. And that's what it's supposed to be. And then you have your C suite who are managing the big picture. They're not doing the day to day work, but they're managing the big picture. That is functional hierarchy, right? But when the people leave the building, the CEO should not be considered better than, morally superior to, or greater than that floor worker, whatever that tier of the work looks like. The people are not hierarchically different. The people
Mhm.
don't have any different value. But that's where it's like it functions when we let it function as just a part of a role, a part of a job, a part of making sure you know who to go to in a given situation. But again, once you're outside of those roles, you leave the building, you're not doing your job anymore, that hierarchy shouldn't exist. And it shouldn't be played out in a I'm better than you or superior to you way in a workplace either.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like the grunt work, or these people deserve minimum wage because it doesn't take any effort or whatever.
Except that it takes all the
It's
effort.
all the effort. And I remember in high school, the hierarchy of you want to go to an elite university and learn STEM, math and science based stuff. and you were just less fortunate slash not smart enough or poor, like technical schools for the less fortunate people. But also, if me figuring out how to live my life in my house, for example, who am I going to call to help me figure out like how a house works, how a car works? And of course, there's that like hierarchy of women don't know shit about their cars. So then men will, who are in charge of car things, will be like, there's all this stuff wrong and we're going to overcharge you for whatever, whatever. But it's, there's so many pieces. Like, again, that's where just hierarchy just continues to filter its way through different things. And it's, oh, it'd be so nice if just everyone made the same thing so we could just barter our shit around.
This is the thing, like I've adopted a practice of exchange with a lot of people who offer different things than I offer, because I'm like, yeah, I notice I'm charging more money than you for
Mhm.
an hour of my time. But I don't believe that your hour of time is less valuable than my hour of time. Like that's
Mm.
my reality, right? So even though I charge a premium price for my one-on-one services now, and if people want them, they can come find me. When it comes to like me working with people, I don't consider my hour any less or more valuable than theirs. And that's not a thing that most people would agree on. But we all have our own gifts. We all have our own blueprint that is completely unique and sacred to us. We all have a role that only we can fill in the collective. And when we reduce people down to the color of their skin or who they love or whether they were born rich or poor, we are completely losing the entire picture. And as we move towards the end of our time, I just want to get into the better ways. And if you have not gotten the memo of the purpose of this episode yet, put it in very black and white. The truth about hierarchy is that it is some made up stuff. And any hierarchy other than that functional hierarchy, or of course, we can talk about the food chain. Sure, that is a hierarchy of ways. But when the planet functions and the animals do what they're going to do, it all works out. So it's our supremacy, our belief as humans that we are supreme over everyone else, and that there are some humans that are somehow supreme over everyone else. That is literally destroying us. So just because someone is different does not mean they are less. But how do we begin to move towards liberation? How do we start to break free from this? So you've talked a lot about curiosity, and like you are one of the most brilliant people I have ever met when it comes to making space for someone with a completely different worldview and just getting curious. Can you speak to what that's like? Because that is a step towards liberation. That's a step towards going, oh, they're different than me, but I'm not going to treat them poorly because of that. I'm going to get curious. So I'd love to hear more
Mm.
about that.
Yeah, you have to be aware of your own. I get very aware of my own physical feelings when someone brings any sort of opinion or what they're seeing, or but usually what I realize is that a lot of people's beliefs and opinions are just kind of like overarching. Like they're very generalized unless you ask more questions. So when they're so overgeneralized and you're feeling a bunch of feelings about these overgeneralized concepts and beliefs, it's, do I have all of the information as to why they believe this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my very first experiences I had as a high schooler, I asked a friend who was an atheist because I was just curious of what caused her to decide to be atheist. And I was like, so what are you like, what caused you to decide that? What was your experience that led you to believe that? And so she provided me with a lot of different points of view. And at that point, I was questioning my own religious concepts. So it was easier for me to do that. But I've also talked to people that have different political views. And I'm like, it it's interesting because, for example, my mom does a really good job of explaining the history of like why she believes things she believes, things that she's witnessed in the past and what she's concluded from those things that she's witnessed. And that's it's very fascinating to hear what people's experiences are and to offer them different points of view. Of if I'm to offer this kernel of a different opinion or a different piece of thing, like what comes up for you, right?
Mhm.
What sort of, so it's like hearing that, but also giving people the space to completely say what they are trying to say too is very important. But at the end of the day, I am not trying to, the goal for me is to model that as a person from the other side, I can kindly give them space and have a conversation about our different beliefs and not evangelize my stance.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the hugest thing for a lot of people is them feeling, oh, this person just invited me to talk because they wanted to change who I am.
Mhm.
And so it's like I might start a conversation because I'm concerned about the path that they might be going down, but I'm not going to reach anyone by being like what you believe is wrong and harmful because they're just going to want to run into the corner, their more radical corner even more because I'm not listening to them.
Triggering that shame, fear, disappointment, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah. So it's not, again, as you say, for roles, like that's not everyone's role. Cause like when
Mhm.
I have talked about this curiosity for people, especially when it comes to people who have voted for Trump and are confused about being affected in some of his policies that he's bringing up, because you will be affected by them.
All of us.
All of us are affected, and in not great ways for a lot of them. And they're like, I didn't expect this to happen. There's a lot of people that are wanting to be like, I freaking told you so, right? Or you deserve this.
Which makes total sense from an
Which
ego perspective. It
total sense of
totally
us
does.
wanting to feel that way. Absolutely. That might not be your role of being the person that offers a curious question, like space for someone to talk about that. In which case, go out on the front lines, call your representatives, do a bunch of other things in the social change ecosystem, because
Mhm.
everyone has a role in social change, social activism, that you don't have to be that bridge builder. That's specifically like the curiosity piece helps everyone in every role, but like specifically, I use the curiosity to try and be the bridge builder in those moments. So,
Yeah. And that's so needed, and we need those bridge builders because again, there is no real hierarchy. It's all
mm-mm,
fabricated. It's all made up. Literally, we are just humans. And humans truly all really want the same things. We just want to live a healthy life of dignity.
mm-hmm,
And I literally don't understand why anyone would disagree with the sentiment that we should all be allowed to live a life of health, dignity, and respect without harming one another. That's where the sticking point is because we really do all this harm. And trying to understand someone else's perspective and open a line of dialogue, if you can't hold space, is going to do more harm. Thank you for speaking to that it's not everybody's role, but there are so many things that we can do. And even if you just invite that energy of curiosity into yourself and you go, I'm really curious, why does that person believe the way that they do? Huh. How could they have missed the memo that hard on this thing over here that I believe in? That curiosity can begin to thaw some of those like frontline internal defenses that like want to go on the warpath with anyone who's different. Again, going back to this, when you look at it, everyone is doing the us versus them. There's no quote unquote side that's right. If you consider yourself on a side and there's another side that you need to attack, you're probably playing into the us versus them, which is so complicated because there is no middle ground right now. Like there is no middle ground available for us because we've gotten to this like point where it's so dire, like between genocide, between just mass levels of domestic and sexual violence, with everything that happens with racist ideals, everything that happens with homophobic and transphobic ideas. There's no room at this point for a middle ground because, like, lots of people are being harmed. But the only side we should be on is the side of the collective, the whole planet, all humans, all animals, unconditional love for everyone. And as long as we continue to rank things based on hierarchy and think that any one person is more or less deserving of love, we're going to continue to see these problems.
That reminds me of what radicalized me was Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches. If you haven't, I know Dr. Seuss is problematic in different ways, of course. But again, just because there are problematic people in every field all the time, none of us are innocent.
None of us are. We're all problematic, and we all have to work on that.
Yeah, but with the Sneetches and like the Lorax, like there were some pretty solid concepts there where the Sneetches was like the Sneetches with the stars on their bellies were better. The ones without the stars on their bellies were not better. And so this Mr. McMonkey McBean came over with his like weird contraption, and I'm like now making this connection. I can't believe as a kid you're like, this is so funny. But Mr. McMonkey McBean saw that conflict and was like, I will give you this ability to change to have a star in your belly. And then all of the ones that had stars on their belly being like, we need a way to make us still better. So now we're going to make it. And so then he's like, that's great because I have another contraption that takes the star off of your belly. So then all of them started like going through it over and over. And it was just, and he was making all of
He
this
was
money.
making all the money. Go follow the money. And this is why I know, like, with the two-party system, the money, it's on both sides, right? This corporations are people, and we treat our corporations better than actual human beings. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. And we can't keep doing this. And I know that this is an uphill battle, but the battle is going to be won through the power of unconditional love, through getting curious about each other, through being willing to step away if we can't be kind, because perpetuating harm perpetuates harm. It's just a ripple effect. How much different could our ripple effect be if we were able to be curious, if we were able to be loving, if we were able to see ourselves as more equal and different? Different does not equal hierarchy. It just equals different. End of story. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Unity of everyone accepting the fact that we're all different, but not different in a way to be perpetuating hierarchy of, oh, yay, I agree in difference, in a way to take advantage of people. No.
We're just different. Yeah. So I hope that there were some gems in this for you. Just know that we are here. Living Luna is here to create community. We had a great conversation in our server the other day about what radicalized us all. And I was like blown away because I know we have people of all different kinds of political beliefs and whatnot, and there are different religions, different genders, orientations, you name it. And it all came down to, yeah, I'm sick of the us versus them. I'm sick of people being pitted against one another and the corporations profiting and the rich getting richer, the billionaires getting richer and still dodging ever more responsibility. So we're here building community that sees each other and that doesn't see anyone as more valuable than anyone else. So please always feel free to join us. The easiest URL is discord.me/livingluna to join us over there. And otherwise head on over to livinglunas.com/socials and you can literally see all of our stuff. Please follow us on YouTube, follow us over in Discord, get on our newsletter. We would love to see you, support you, cheer you on, and just be in community with you, because that's the answer to all of this BS is to build community. So thank you so much, Ike, for joining me today and having this conversation with me. I hope it was as enjoyable for you as it was for me.
Always.
All right. Until next time, my friends, we love you. We see you. We believe in you. That brings us to the end of this conversation today. Thanks for being brave enough to walk in the shadows with me. If you found value in this episode, please consider subscribing to Shadowside with Safrianna wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review to help others find this space of transparency and expansion. You can also connect with me at safrianna.com or livinglunas.com for more information. Until next time, know I'm loving you fiercely and cheering you on.